let me ask you about other big news in addition to immigration, and this relates to it. The victory, as we've been talking about this morning, of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is a 28-year-old woman out of New York, beating Joe Crowley. A couple of things on that. She ran in her district on abolishing ICE. I don't know that I've seen public reaction from you on this issue. Do you think ICE should be abolished? Is that something that Democrats in Congress should take up and push?
I've been a strong supporter of comprehensive immigration reform. We have immigration laws that need to be changed. We also have enforcement of our immigration laws. That includes ICE and on the border, the Customs and Border Patrol people. Those enforcement processes also need to be reviewed and changed as appropriate. So it should be in the context of comprehensive immigration reform that I have been a long-time advocate of.
So it sounds like you're saying, I'm sorry, Senator, I didn't mean to interrupt. It sounds like you're saying change ICE, don't get rid of it. Is that fair?
Well, I think we should be. We should look at what kind of enforcement processes ICE uses, and whether it's appropriate. And as I said, that should be part of a comprehensive immigration reform process. You
have been one of the biggest voices in the Senate on immigration reform.
Yes.
But you also are inside, obviously, the Democratic Party, led by, on the Senate side, Chuck Schumer, on the House side, Nancy Pelosi. Ocasio-Cortez's victory, does it signal to you, do you think that it's time for Schumer and Pelosi to step aside, that there is frustration brewing inside the Democratic Party against establishment leadership?
The Democratic Party is a really big tent. We have a lot of people who are much more conservative. I've been a progressive, and we used to be called liberals back then. And so, you know, the people who win are the ones in our party who are in touch with their constituents and who their constituents know will fight for them. And I think Alexandria was very clear on the things that were important to her constituents, and they heard her message.
And so do you think that message will reflect or should reflect in the halls of Congress when it comes to the current makeup of Democratic leadership? Does that need to change?
To me, the lesson learned is that all of us should be very much in touch with our constituencies. That's what I seek to do. And then our constituents need to know that we're for them. We're fighting for them. And this is not a one-size-fits-all. Our candidates have to know their districts. They need to understand what the concerns are of their own constituencies. And that is not 100% the same all across our country. So the candidates who win are the ones who understand and who are in touch.
Thank you for checking out our YouTube channel. Why don't you subscribe? It's really easy. Just click on that button down there. And for more news from MSNBC, click on any of these videos here for the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more videos from MSNBC with our newsletters. Head over to msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up.